Welcome, everyone. My name is Dr. Terry Hildebrandt. I'm the Director of Evidence-Based Coaching at the Fielding Graduate University. Today is September 25th, 2019, and we're really excited today to have a panel for you. This is part of our Evidence-Based Coaching Professional Series Webinars, where we invite in groups of experts and coaches and alums of Fielding to talk about the work they're doing in various aspects of coaching. And today we're going to be talking about coaching entrepreneurs. So this is an exciting field of working with specific clients, the entrepreneurial world. We have three folks who have been either entrepreneurs themselves and or coaching entrepreneurs for quite a number of years. So we're excited to have Richard LeBoon. Richard is a PhD student as well as an entrepreneur and executive and leadership coach. And he'll be saying more about himself in a minute. We also have Rick Chastain, which is also an entrepreneur and evidence-based coaching graduate of Fielding, and Howard Fox, who's also an alum of Fielding from a couple of programs. So I'm sure Howard will say a little bit more about himself. The way today will work is if you have any questions, feel free to post those in the chat room, and we'll ask those questions a little later. I have some pre-prepared questions that I'm going to start today with. So just to introduce the webinar today, our intention is to explore how coaching can support entrepreneurs in leadership, business development, and organizational development. And our panelists today will discuss their work in helping entrepreneurs reach their business and professional goals and learn why every entrepreneur needs to hire a coach. So I'm going to kick it off with some brief introductions, and if each of you could spend a few minutes telling us about your journey of coaching entrepreneurs and how you came to specialize in this particular niche of coaching. And let's start out with Howard Fox.
Hi, thank you, Terry. So Howard Fox, I was part of cohort 4 a long time ago. And as Terry alluded to, I also was in the OMD program. That was my second program, so a master's as well. And as I like to tell people, I'm a recovering IT business consultant and was just miserable in the IT space and decided to go into coaching, leadership development. And as a coach and in coaching entrepreneurs, it really came down to coaching even 10 years ago. It was a very crowded space, especially here in Chicago. And it was really necessary to find a niche. And you hear that a lot in, when you go through into coaching, become familiar with the ICF. And so my niche was around LinkedIn and networking, social networking. And the entrepreneurs all were familiar with LinkedIn and needed a LinkedIn profile. And so that's how I was developing my practice. I'm going to do other aspects of coaching, leadership, executive, dysfunctional or workplace bullying, and a number of assessments, but it just always comes back to networking. And there are just so many entrepreneurs in the room. And I would say, as a coach and I am a solo entrepreneur. So I understand within my own frame my issues, and my issues sometimes are a little different, but some cases they're very similar to what other entrepreneurs are going through. So it's been not the smoothest path, but it certainly has been exciting. So that's my background.
Howard. Thank you very much, Howard. We'll talk more about that in a moment. So Richard LeBoon, if you would mind introducing yourself and talking about your journey.
Thank you. Yes, Richard LeBoon. I've actually been a serial entrepreneur for probably 21 years, and several different companies, success, exit, failure. So from that, I looked back many years ago, probably about 5 years ago, as I was beginning to exit the last company about 3 years ago. And I said, I wish there was somebody there with us, usually mentors or as maybe an investor or somebody who was a senior advisor in some way, but wasn't really on the radar screen. And just through research and due diligence, I said, this could be something where I become my own business, but not creating a business. So it's creating a business, but I'm running it myself. There's no employees, there's nobody else anymore. I've been there and really see myself as more of a trusted advisor to entrepreneurs. But it really comes down to, I think, Terry, what you had mentioned, personal and professional goals. And I think there's a lot of misunderstanding. We hear leadership coach, we hear this kind of coach. With my clients, because I really focus on entrepreneurs, and it could be an entrepreneur in a startup. It could be somebody who's thinking of a startup, somebody who's exiting, somebody who, it doesn't matter, is that they all have goals and they want to perform, and they may need leadership development at one time. I've been working with somebody for 18 months. It's gone from that to now he wants to create a grandiose plan for the next 10 years. So it goes from micro to macro. And I think that is my sweet spot. But I didn't start there initially as a niche. I started working with career coaching when I first was in the, certainly coming out of the certification, because that was just natural. Okay, everybody need a career, and I build up but then I said, okay, my niche found me, and it was what I was. So I'm working with me and understanding that on the front lines. But when I first started, I never would have expected, but here it is. So yes, I am fully in with companies. The sweet spot is really probably co-founders of companies or founders of companies where they're ready to scale or need sort of that. There's still sort of a gap. And how do I get to that level? And that goes everything from mindset to their health to even relationships. It doesn't, it's wide open. I've dealt with all of it. So it's just fascinating to be there on the front lines.
All right. Thank you, Richard.
Mm-hmm.
Rick Chastain.
Well, thanks, Terry. And Richard, you and I have a really similar path towards coaching. I have been an entrepreneur for the majority of my career. So that probably goes back 25 or 30 years. I started a number of companies throughout my career, and I'm currently still active in a company that I co-founded with two others in 2009. It's a software platform. Those of you who are familiar a little bit, it's what we call a software as a service platform, which mainly means it's monetized by subscription revenue. Anyway, the bottom line is that I have been an entrepreneur really my entire life, and for the last 10 to 12 years have been in the technology space. Our company is a technology company. We're a marketing platform. And so the bottom line is that I'm sort of similar in the sense of I've come into coaching entrepreneurs from my own experience as having been an entrepreneur, and I'm still an entrepreneur. I'm currently exiting from the company that I mentioned before. And over that process, I'm sort of dialing back my involvement in that company and increasing my coaching practice. And so that's just kind of where I currently am situationally. I'm sure we'll kind of get into more of the tone or how I specialize in terms of what types of coaching I do, but the large focus that I tend to experience with my clients is really addressing issues of transformative coaching with most of the clients that I have. They've all been entrepreneurs or are coming in with some experience as entrepreneurs. They're usually active in the companies that they have founded. Sometimes those companies are doing well, sometimes they're not. It really just depends. But the one commonality that I see amongst my clients is they've all reached a similar place in that what got them to where they currently are is less and less effective in how they want to manage themselves moving forward. And so that's generally where we will begin. And anyway, that's just a brief introduction.
Great. Thanks, Rick.
Yeah.
So how have you seen coaching support entrepreneurs in business development? I know business development is a big topic. Certainly, Howard, talking about your LinkedIn business, I'm sure that's a huge piece of this. So maybe we'll start with you, Howard, to get your thoughts about how have you seen coaching support business development?
So coaching for me to help my client do their business development?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, fair enough. I think the clients that I see, the entrepreneurs that I chat with and meet at networking events, they're very good at what they do. They have some type of specialty, whether it's like Rick has, the IT background, the software, the marketing. They've got a lot of specialty, and the problem I think that I've seen they run into is they get caught up in not only knowing what they do very well, but trying to take on other roles, which they may not do very well. And they suddenly kind of, the gears start to freeze up, and they struggle with business development because you're trying to be everything everywhere at all times. And, from a coaching perspective, I think, while we want to meet them where they're at, understand their goals, that's when it leads into the opportunity to take a step back, look at what's working, what are the things they can hand off to help them grow their business, to help them be more effective and efficient, and to learn to trust perhaps a little bit more that there's other people in the company, if there's more than just the individual, but are there other people that can take on some of your responsibilities so that you can focus which you're excellent at and what you should be focusing on. And I think once they start to free that up, then there's business development activities that can start to come into play.
Excellent. Thank you. Richard, thoughts about business development? Is this a topic that comes up for you or with your clients?
Well, ironically, I probably get 2 or 3 times a week of how, companies can actually find me clients. You ever get that on LinkedIn? So now that is probably 25%. I think what it comes down to, it's still another goal, right? Let's say it's somebody who is a technical person, is an engineer. They don't know how to do business development. Or it's somebody who has reached sort of a crossroads. They've been rejected. They feel, how do I grow this? And so once again, to me, it's just starting with coaching, asking where they're at, what's the goal, creating a plan, taking the steps, implementing the plan. I mean, it's the basics of, I think coaching is there's basics, there's a framework. And with that, business development, and it's really taking that first step and then building upon that. And I think the issue with that is it comes back to me with mindset. So they always come back to mindset. And I think it comes down to where I focus on is being more of a growth mindset, is that there's a lot of that sort of, I've been rejected and I don't want to do, or they've been successful in the past and they're afraid to reach out again. And I think that's the critical piece, but it's probably 25%, because what I learned in business, if you can't develop business, there is no business. I know that means something, but that's the tip of the spear. And from that, everything kind of builds onto that. And so that's usually what I see. But most of the people I do find, probably half at least, are marketing in some way, but they may not be marketing and understanding or how to sell or how to reach out and how to take that next step because they've been rejected, or they may need to kind of have a reframing or a refocus of what they have been doing. I think what our friend, Rick said, is that coming and, what got them there is not really continuing that success, and success changes. It's always something. So that I would say, yeah, business development is probably 25% of what I focus on.
Great. So Rick, I see you nodding a lot here. So I'd love to hear your perspective as someone who's been an entrepreneur and now coaches entrepreneurs in this space.
Well, kind of just tying into what has already been said. There seems to sort of be an arc of how an entrepreneur's life goes in the creation and growth of a company. And it sort of looks like this, as in the beginning, the entrepreneur or perhaps that small team of founders can do a little bit of everything. And they can grow the company on the basis of their innate skills, perhaps some skills that they might acquire, and then just moxie and motivation and diligence. And that gets them to a certain place. And typically what you'll see then is a couple of things will start to happen. One is they'll want to scale. And they might have a product that's ready to scale, and they'll maybe even have funding that will allow them to start to scale. And they'll start to hit some innate limitations in the company's ability to grow. And it kind of falls into a few areas. One is it falls into just the tactical execution of growth. And so that might be a lack of process within the company. It might very well be that the company has reached a point where it needs experts in their subject matter areas in order to carry the company forward. And so in that area, I can be engaged as a coach, or sort of a hybrid between a coach and a consultant, and just help them begin to identify some of the basic best practices of scaling their company, whether that's marketing practice, customer service practice. In this particular case, they may be looking to bring on their first sales team, and I will work with them on some of the basic components of getting those activities established and operating. I'll also admit that there's some parts of that, and Richard, you might feel the same way, where as a coach, I have done that many times. And in my coaching life, I don't want a whole bunch of teaching folks how to run their companies. And so on that consulting side, what I will typically find is that there'll be companies who already have a business consultant. They'll come out of the Traction methodology or the Rockefeller Habits methodology, and they may already have someone online that helps them do that. And that'll be some of the places they go for, quote, business consulting. Where I tend to get involved with my clients is in either the cultural, relational, or the intrapersonal aspects of what is holding them back from allowing their company to really grow. Why are they having difficulty delegating? What is it about their team that needs to change culturally so that those experts can come in and take ownership over the areas that they know they need to do in order to scale the company? And so what I typically find is that with an entrepreneur, we'll start at the beginning talking about tactics. Won't be too long until we start talking about things that occur in their family of origin, or beliefs that they have, or values that they hold. And that's where we'll tend to focus on how they change the culture of the company in order to allow it to grow.
If I could just add to that, with Rick, I agree with him. I'm purposely framing coaching as the next consult. It's not consulting, but this is where the future. I've seen so many people on LinkedIn, they've been consultants, now they call themselves coaches. Okay. It's really amazing how even in 5 years, just 3 years, just the transformation. And I think it comes down, the overarching model or framework is the intrapersonal, the interpersonal, and then the transpersonal. I've had more clients, it's probably almost 80% now, talk about what's beyond them. It's either spiritual or it's something greater to them, because they see themselves, and I think it's the zeitgeist of the day, is that it's our values. What are we doing socially? What's that social impact? I'm just not creating money. I'm just not trying to find, the next big thing. And so that's the shift I've even done it for myself over the years. My own self-development is that it's all money. And now it's, how can I help others too? Right. I mean, we get to that level, but that's the awareness that I've seen. And so culture is a part of that, but it's a culture of the person inside as much as the culture inside the company. So absolutely, Rick, I would agree 100%. It's that's my sweet spot. Even I'll do the business about, I love all that. To me, it's the person. It's the holistic piece. It's you as a person that I'm focusing, not the business, because the person impacts the business. That's what I love to do.
Yeah. So I think you guys bring up a really important point, and one of the things I always say about coaching is that all executive and leadership coaches are also life coaches. And we're really clear about this in our program, right, that we don't just only focus on executive coaching, although that's a huge piece of the program, being in the School of Leadership Studies as our host school. However, life coaching has to be a core foundation for you to be able to work with senior leaders, executives, entrepreneurs. So you guys are really affirming that truth, and that's been my personal experience as well.
Gary, to your point, I think that's one of the beautiful aspects of fielding and the evidence-based is there's so many disciplines we can pull from, and we all have, everybody in the program, whether it's cohort 4 or 30, 39, it's in there right now, all have a variety of backgrounds, and to be able to get beyond the, I want to help people self-act. I mean, you go into an ICF, local ICF meeting, oh, I want to be able to help people be their best self. That's all fine and dandy, but I think the evidence-based approach at fielding allows people to, sake of better words, put the rubber to the road, see what the models are useful for each student to take and be able to put that into practice once they get out of the coaching program. Because, in this day and age, if the entrepreneur, and they do tend to be younger, it's like, okay, why do I need to know this? Mm-hmm. And so they've got their goals, but we have to be able to help them right away. And so there is that huge blur between executive leadership, life coaching, it all just melds together. It's just that, I think our profession at the association level wants us to niche down, for sake of better words.
If I could just, with Howard real quick, we and I talked about this. I think if you go out, so this is a sort of an entrepreneurial piece. If you brand yourself, you're going to be a self-actualization coach, and you're going to talk, you're framing it in a way that it may take 100 people you talk to that says, oh, that's what I need. So you're working with entrepreneurs, you got to find what they need. And that's where fielding comes into play. It's Lenny Flower and it's Brennan, the eclectic coach. What's in your toolbox? What do they need when they need it? And that to me is that's the true difference. Now there are niches where if you want to go and you want to be the, emotional intelligence coach, that's great. But if you go and talk to entrepreneurs, they may have no idea, or they may say, I don't need that right now. And so meeting them where they're at, mm-hmm. That's what Rick said, is starting where they're at. That's the segue in. It will always open up.
Yep, really good point. So leads us to our next question is, you've been talking about this already to some degree, but how have you seen coaching support entrepreneurs in their personal and leadership development? So let's start with Rick Chastain this time.
Well, I can use sort of an example of a engagement that comes to mind. So it's pretty typical for entrepreneurs to believe that normal rules and processes aren't applicable to them. And the reason for that is they're entrepreneurs. And so there's this idea that says the odds are already stacked against you when you start a company, because most companies don't succeed. And so in order to start a company and give it sustained effort, somewhere in that process, you've got to believe that somehow the rules are not going to apply to you. You're not going to be one of those 9 out of 10 companies who don't make it past their first couple of years. And so how this translates into how entrepreneurs see themselves is oftentimes they will not be aware of the typical developmental processes that they're going through as adults. And so an example of that, and it's very common for me to interact with entrepreneurs who are in their late 20s or in their early 30s, and they'll have things along the lines of, well, I'm really not sure where I'm going in life, or I'm not really sure what my role is now, or things along those lines. And so, you can look at that and you can go, well, those are typical adult development types of transitions that we can work with and we can begin to talk about. But I'll just give you an example of another way in which entrepreneurs can tend to somehow sabotage themselves, and it comes from beliefs that originate in their family of origin. So in this particular case, I have a client who grew up in a home that was his generation after generation were pastors. And he is a successful entrepreneur. He has started numerous companies, 5 or 6 at this point, and all gotten them to a place where they were really beginning to be successful. And he would feel that he was obligated to bring in a partner, even though it wasn't really necessary for the sake of the business. And typically choose a partner who was not as able to run the company or carry the weight. And what he would find is the companies would begin to founder because he was bringing in people who weren't really qualified to run their company. And he was doing it on the basis of beliefs that came out of his family of origin that I can't get too successful. I've got to share this success with someone else. And so as we began to work with him, what we began to realize is that he has every right and expectation to choose partners who are qualified and competent to help him actually grow the company. And as he began to make that switch and began to think about that in terms of, yes, I have the right to select the kind of companies who can add value, the kind of partners who can add value, he began to find that his world got better. He was able to delegate more. He was able to inherit the innate skills and talents of the people that he would bring on board. And in this particular case, his company was able to become more successful because of it. So that's just an example that came to mind about a particular client.
Great. Thank you for sharing that. Let's hear from Howard.
I think, Rick raised a lot of good points, and I would go back to in the early stages of the engagement with a potential entrepreneur. And I think he's right too. They are younger these days. They're in their late 20s. They graduated with an MBA. They went through an entrepreneur courses, in school, and now they're starting it. And I think really helping them become crystal clear about what are my goals and objectives, and then what do I need to know or who do I need to know? Who do I need to bring in to the opportunity? And in some of these cases, and I'm remembering, some of the tools we use, like the Johari window, there's things I know about myself, what I know I need to do, what other people know that I need to do, but then understanding too those blind spots and being able to take the time, whether it's 30 minutes a day, 30 minutes a week, it doesn't matter, but there has to be some time baked into that schedule, because as an entrepreneur, we probably can all say it's a 24/7 job in some cases. So we've got to be able to bake time into our schedule that we can reflect how are things going, what's working, what's not working, end of the day, beginning of the day. And then I think that's where, from a coaching perspective, that might, in early stages, that might have been all they needed in a conversation with a coach. I just need somebody to talk to who understands what I'm going through. And I think, like with Richard and Rick, having run successful businesses, sold them, bought them. I mean, I came from a consulting role, so building a business is new to me. But just having somebody to talk to vent, to bounce ideas off of. So I think from a personal leadership perspective, sometimes I have found, at least the types of clients that I come into contact with, those are the conversations that have been very valuable. If they need more strategic, tactical help, I mean, that's again the beauty of networking, is I know people I can call that we can bring in to give help.
Great, thank you. Richard, any thoughts on this?
Yeah, if I can add to that. So I think that Rick and Howard, they're sort of a dynamic here. It's really creating the third space. So you could have a goal. We create the goal. And if I come in as the coach with the mindset, okay, we're going to do how's that goal going? No. Being mindful and being aware, what is the client needing that day? And that is the gap, or that third, just allowing that space to be created could be the conversation you need. Something so frivolous, could be something that came up since last time or 2 weeks ago. And that's the dynamic that you have to be ready, because if you have an agenda, you've lost it. But there is an agenda. If the client, but you're meeting a client, you could check in with them. So each client, I have them where they check in with themselves. It's another way of mindfulness, checking in, being aware of self, but it's checking in with themselves 2 or 3 times a day. Where am I? What's going on? Sort of that self-care. And so self-care has become a major, and I'm a recovering entrepreneur, so I understand. Been there and done that, burned out, right? So it's like, okay, bro, I get it, been there and done that, but what's going to happen in week or month 3? You got all this energy, and I think it was Rick or Howard said about sustainability. It's how do we sustain? But then the other thing to add to that is to pivot. We hear a lot about pivot in business, but I call it pivot in the person. And there's a sort of pivoting myself. Where am I at, and do I need to pivot and take what's working and leave behind what's not? That's what's not working is bad. I call it just set it aside for right now. It may not be needed right now, but you're not to get rid of it completely. So we sort of have this fight or flight. It's always this kind of ebb and flow and meeting the client where they're at, but creating that third space. Some people call it the sacred space. Whatever it to me is creating the space and allowing the space to be there. That is the critical piece that I see.
Nice.
Mm-hmm.
So what are the best ways an entrepreneur can leverage working with a professional coach? And let's hear from Howard.
The question, understanding what their challenges are. So really coming in, what are you working on? Where are your struggles? What do you need help with? What's working? What's not working? So coming up with that list, and as Rich said, if something's not working, doesn't mean it's thrown in the trash. Just put it off to the side for now, and then it's okay. How can I help you? So I have a client right now that I'm actually doing recruiting for. I mean, he can do it. He's probably very good at it, but being a coach and understanding some of the basics of psychology and, being able to read between the lines of a resume and ask questions, I can take that off his plate. And so helping him or her understand what's the most important thing that I need to do and I should be doing. Do I need help? Do I need a skill set, some tools? What are the things I shouldn't be doing, but I still need to get them done, and I need help to do that? Is this something I can help with? Maybe, maybe not. But then I know, okay, would you like my help to go find these resources? And I'll do the vetting I can do the interviewing, the discovery, the vetting. We'll bring them in. You've got the final decision, but I can certainly help you with that piece.
Yeah.
So I think, this is, in some cases, I think we blur the line a little bit from coaching and consulting. It's a kind of consultative coaching, mentoring. I mean, Rick kind of alluded way back in the first part of the conversation. In some ways, based on those two's experience, they provide a mentor type of relationship because they've been there. They know what it takes to grow the business. So if we can, from my perspective, provide some consultative coaching, I think that goes a long way. And that's where someone like myself can be supportive to a client.
I think it's a good point that, even though we want to be clear about what is coaching and what isn't, when we're supporting clients, we might play multiple roles. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what you're saying is that, being mindful of what the client needs and then what you're qualified to deliver, right? And based on your background and experience, you might be able to offer more than coaching as a possibility in your business. So let's hear from Richard. Other thoughts about how you think an entrepreneur can best leverage working with a professional coach?
I think it's really seeing the coach as sort of a resource or a toolbox, kind of being an open. It's amazing. Some clients, it becomes everything. I mean, they ask a lot of things. Rick alluded to family of origin. I get a lot of that. I mean, because that's where we're from. I have everything from dealing with, the dynamics of relationships, or a partner. How do I approach a partner at work? Recently is, how do I work with, and so allowing that to blossom or put that on the table so that there's sort of that interaction. It's not giving advice, but we kind of role play that out and see it from a different perspective. And that's really what I do is just looking at it from the different perspectives. They could have sort of the family of origin, how they see it. And they're looking to me as a trusted advisor to give them a different frame that they're not seeing. And I may not know exactly but we're not giving them advice, is saying, well, what if you thought about it this way? Or, okay, I know you have this goal, but has the goal changed? And so things are changing, and I think you have to change with them. But I think the dynamic is that professional coaching is truly the essence that they need. It really is something that they know they need it, but they don't know how to use it or what it is yet. And if we just pitch, we're a coach, I don't think they buy that. Is where do we meet them? What is their need? And that's the old adage, is finding what the market needs. And so I pitch it, I'm here to help you as an entrepreneur to grow professionally and personally. That can mean a whole bunch of things.
Rick, what's your thought on this? Why should someone hire a professional coach as an entrepreneur?
Well, if I were advising someone and they were saying, hey, listen, I'm an entrepreneur, I'm building a company, I'm thinking about a coach, what would I get out of having a coach? My initial response would be, it will help you increase your self-awareness. Mm-hmm. And by doing that, you'll become more effective in terms of leadership and decision-making. Now, that's not where all clients start. They typically start with a how question of, how should I do this, that, or the other? Yeah. And from a basis of experience, I can usually help them and say, well, what about accountability within your organization? What about goals in your organization, and how well structured are they? What about metrics and how you assign accountability according to metrics? And we'll go through a lot of those kinds of things. But where I tend to see clients most effectively leverage a coach, one is as a learning resource. I work best with clients who are motivated to learn in between the sessions. And then number two is utilizing a coach, and you said it, Richard, holding space for them. Many times the people who lead companies don't have a safe space where they can talk about what's going on with them. What are they afraid of? What are they willing to say to the coach that they can't say to anyone else? And so within that context of shifting frameworks, and we've talked about it, and so I'll just focus on one aspect, is many times you'll see an entrepreneur shift their framework simply by hearing themselves say something they haven't felt safe to say in another environment. Right. And they'll lead themselves to their own conclusions in many of those instances. So that's just another sort of added piece of thought around the same topic.
Great, excellent. So I'm going to open it up to the audience at this point and see what other questions or comments anyone in our live audience today might have. So if you have a question, feel free to unmute yourself. You can also raise your hand in the chat room, or post a question in the chat room if you would prefer that I read it. But any thoughts from the audience right at this moment?
Oh no, we covered it all.
We'll give people a moment. So while
this is Antoine. I'm out in Atlanta.
Welcome, Antoine. If you want, you can turn your video on if you
sure.
would like to.
Yes. It says you have stopped it, so I can't.
Oh, let me ask you to start video. Let's see if that works. There we go.
There it goes.
So I came in late. Sorry. So just want to get an understanding of how much from the panel, how much coaching, how much do entrepreneurs make of your coaching clients? the percentage of entrepreneurs?
So for me, or I can, it's probably 90% at this point. I mean, that's
Yep.
become my sweet spot. I purposely, when I started, did not focus on that. I worked with, like I said, mostly on career coaching. It was just easier to start with. But out of that, I realized that I was more geared towards business. That's my background. I said, that's a sweet spot. I feel comfortable, and it found me. So it wasn't. I was open to wherever it led. And what I found out is it's not just business coaching. It's everything from life to spirituality to personal. It's amazing. And I look at the whole person as a person. Now, will it change? Maybe, but I think it's my sweet spot. It's really where my calling is at this point.
Others want to share what percentage of your business is entrepreneurs? Yeah.
For me, I'd say mine's about 50%, maybe a little bit lower. I mean, I tend to work with a lot of smaller business owners, and whether you would still call them entrepreneurial or not, but
No, they are.
Yeah,
I would say they are.
Yeah.
Great.
I'm the same, about 90%, just in my mind. I tend to work with co-founders, founders, and sometimes the level just below that group. And I usually am working with smaller companies, under 100 million in revenue, maybe under, say, 150 or 200 people in headcount. And so that's just where I've landed. And I'm like, Richard, it's all referral business that comes to me. I don't really go out and look for too much of it yet.
Thanks.
Yeah, I'm starting to, well, I'm in my PhD right now, but I think at the beginning of the year is beginning to market in a unique way by doing speaking engagements, doing a lot of speeches and focusing on how coaching could help entrepreneurs. So I'm really going to be kind of framing that, as we've heard consultants for years and a lot out there. So beginning to kind of frame it in a way, and I see a real niche within private equity venture capitalists. They're beginning to realize the importance of coaching because of all the investments they make. Is how do we pull that in? How do we support those founders? That's an area, sweet spot that I see. So building that. I know the ICF is big on niches, and I went through one of their marketing courses last year. I think not they're big on, because they understand if you only have so much time and so much money to kind of focus, it's like being a consultant. Are you a consultant to everybody, or what's your niche? It's a practice, right? Or a lawyer. I mean, you could be a generalist, or you could be a specific person focused on something. So.
Great. Any other questions, Antoine, before we move on to our next question?
Actually, yeah, I think, is it Rick? Is that your name? You touched on it a bit around the marketing of your services. I know a number of you mentioned that your practice grew organically or word of mouth, but has it been, you identify that that's your particular niche, but are you actively marketing to that niche?
I am. I mean, I've always have. I'm heavily on LinkedIn. So LinkedIn has been my, but then starting in 2020 is going offline, the old traditional way, right? Meaning networking again. I mean, I've always networked with that, but I think really focusing out and focusing, I've really honed my message. And so it takes a while. I mean, you got to build your own content, your own message. Everything's got to be locked in, from website to business card to how you present, what's your elevator pitch. I mean, you are a business. That's the real essence. I think, Howard, you and I talked about this. We are the business. It's the hardest thing to do, because you've got to sell you, but you can't oversell it, because you can't look like you're selling something, right? It's like, what are you selling? It's intangible, but it's tangible. See, that's the crazy part. It's like, I can't show you a widget.
I was just curious with Antoine. I see your headset, but it looks like you've got a stethoscope around your neck.
So this is for my phone, which I don't need now.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm making an assumption, like if it was a stethoscope, that's perfect opportunity to say you've got a built-in niche, and that would be to explore what that looks like. Where what are the struggles the individuals in your profession have. That'd be the first, as far as networking, those would be the first places that I would go to start to network. Where are people that have been doing the work just like me? What have been my struggles, my peers, my boss's struggles? That'd be the first place that I would go to start to do some of that networking and to build the practice.
Yeah, I'd just like to point out that I consider myself as an entrepreneur, as a coach that started, his own business, right? So, we are all entrepreneurs. Once you start hanging out a shingle and becoming, a solopreneur or gathering together a group of other coaches to work with you and your business, and it is a journey, right, that we're all on as coaches. Unless you're an internal coach, then of course you're not an entrepreneur. But even being internal, sometimes internal coaches have to market their services within the company. So it can be very similar to being an entrepreneur, even if you work for a large company, which was certainly the case for me when I was an internal coach. But that changes its flavor when you become external. Well, Anton, thank you for your questions. I'm going to go on to Bob, because Bob has a question here as well. Bob, do you want to come online and ask it?
Oh, sure. And I'm at the moment forgetting which one made the comment, but said that there was a general trend towards people being interested in making contributions to their company or their surroundings, rather than emphasis on companies themselves or companies making money. And I think that's a great trend. I'm just wondering how large it is, and could talk a bit more about it.
I think that was me to start with, and maybe Rick saw it too. I think because of and Howard brought up the age, we're dealing with a lot of millennials, right? I mean, that's on most entrepreneurs, and it's not all, but it's probably 50% and they have a different dynamic. They have a different lens they look through. So different to somebody who's 49, who he's always talking to me about how much money he needs to, where his focus is money. This is a different dynamic. And so meeting even the age bracket, but not everybody's like, I'm just using a generality. But I think looking through the lens of the value and the social impact, that's very important. And if you as a coach just say, okay, now our goal is how much money you're going to make. Now, that's part of it. But why are we making, not why, but what's the purpose of making the money? What's the impact? Who's it going to help? I mean, it's those how and what questions are just the open-ended questions are just as important if they were working on a goal. Because a goal could be making the money for a social impact. That's what so I'm very open, but I've seen that probably, and I think it's going to be a trend growing more and more. Even within the older age gap because they realize the importance of it because of leaving legacy as the adult development stage. Is that whole legacy perspective. And so we're going to filter that through. And I think it's also the zeitgeist. I think it's what we have become as a whole. So we're kind of leaving the old and going into a newer perspective.
I think I'm seeing that too with entrepreneurs I work with. B corporations are becoming more popular with them. And if you don't know what a B corporation is, it's a specific set of guidelines around sustainability and social responsibility, where it's a play on the old C corporation and S corporation. Right. So it's a whole new kind of ethos, really, around business, which is tied to conscious capitalism. There's a whole conscious capitalism movement, and there are experts and conferences on that as well. A lot of entrepreneurs are involved in that, for sure. Bob, any other follow-up question?
No, I've just become interested recently because my partner Sarah teaches at the college level social entrepreneurs. I'm just saying what a tremendous impact people with that vision of contributing with is making around the world. And so glad you guys are helping people out.
Great. Thank you, Bob.
Thank you.
Terry, I just add a quick thing, especially for those who are currently in their program of study. So I work with millennials. We employ about 22 or 24 people below the age of 30. And it's very common to see them bring to the table a much more conscious mindset towards what is the inherent value of what I'm doing here. And I think that's a generational shift that's really here to stay. And frankly, I find it to be one of the most rewarding aspects of working with millennials is they bring frankly a better set of motivations than my generation did into the world of work. The other thing I would say, especially if you're a student, is entrepreneurs are not immune from the laws of development. And so all of the things that you're currently studying will apply to the life of an entrepreneur. And this question of meaning is a life transition question. And we know that. We see it in our psychological theory. And I see it play out in real life amongst the clients that I have who are 40 plus. They're all, and I'm one of them, by the way, who grapple with that question of, does my work have meaning? But even in the younger clients as well, they're looking for that same thing. So as you're studying, as you're hearing what you're learning in your coursework, pay attention to those transition theories, or the increasing models of mental complexity are another. Things that have to do with midlife transition are also really front and center with a lot of entrepreneurs, especially if they're looking at exiting or getting more meaning out of their work. So anyway, just a couple added thoughts.
Thank you. We have one last question I think we have time for, and it's from Brianna. Brianna, would you like to ask your question? Okay, I'm going to ask it for her. So do you ever delineate consulting from coaching, or do you see it as a help my clients in the capacity they need approach? Any thoughts, or who would like to take that one? Rick,
you can start.
I just to tell you that I do it all the time. I will try to delineate with a client. We're now in a consulting realm. We're talking about how to operate your business, and I'm going to bring subject matter expertise about operating your business into the conversation. And one of the reasons why I do that is I really want to protect and safeguard the space where we're really talking about transformation in the coaching context. And I want to make sure that we recognize that that space is different than the space that we might be talking about. Here's how you set goals, or here's how you do accountability. And so, yes, I delineate frequently with clients along those lines.
If I could just add to that, how I do it is they would add, it's the typical question, well, how would you do that? And I say, well, as an entrepreneur, let me give you an example of maybe how it could be done, or how maybe I had an example. So the example perspective, and they say, oh, I never thought. So I never answer the question, but I never go into the I never advise in that realm, is that I leave it still open. And that's an art. That's an art and a science. It took me a long time to do that, because you're always in that mode of solving it or saying, oh yeah, I got the answer. Even if I had the answer, I'll say, well, let's look at a couple of answers or a couple options. And it's just perturbing, being a catalyst for them thinking. But I do is just separating that. And it just comes through practice. I mean, and reflection. That reflection is so critical in practice, in coaching. If it's just, you say, oh, I messed up on that. Okay, and it takes time. It just takes falling down constantly and getting up. Here I am. So no, I never answer the question, but yeah, it's the same, how to really, separate the two with that. So I think that's what it is. Yeah.
I would echo what both had said. I mean, you constantly having to respond to it, and just asking the client, what would you like right now? Is this something we have to get done right now? We have to have a decision, or can we talk this through and help them get to the place they need to be on their own?
Yeah, I think the brainstorming with versus telling is a really key differentiator between coaching and consulting. And not that you would maybe never also have a consulting engagement with a client. You might, but I think it's helpful to be clear on what you're doing for the integrity of the profession, and then also, you know, not getting the client to be dependent on the coach.
Yeah.
You know, it's easy for you to become the answer man or answer woman or answer person, you know, as opposed to really helping them develop. You know, we're trying to get them to develop their own decision-making capabilities, their own problem-solving capacities, as opposed to doing that lifting for the client.
If I could just add that, Terry, real quick, it's the co-creative, right? It's if I'm with you,
Yes.
that's what and that's the essence. I'm never going to lift it for you, but I'm going to co-create it. And as I frame that constantly. And that to me is even using the verbiage. It's a framing technique to get them realizing that, oh, I'm not alone, but at the same time, I'm not looking to you as my sole right. It's co-creative.
Yeah, absolutely. So one last quick question to wrap up today. What advice do each of you have for coaches who'd like to specialize in coaching entrepreneurs? Any parting wisdom around how to get started or what you might want to do to enter this niche?
I would just add network where entrepreneurs hang out, whether it's, you know, incubators, whether it's meetup groups, whether it's small business networking councils, SCORE. Find out where entrepreneurs hang out and sit back, listen to what questions they're asking, what challenges they have, and then just be a sponge. That's where I would start. That's it.
Great, thank you, Howard.
I'll take a different spin on that. That's from a networking. I would say is, as you coach entrepreneurs, is sort of finding out, even within a niche initially, what type of entrepreneur you want to work with. Because that to me is that, you know, if everybody's an entrepreneur, I mean, it's really focusing on something initially so you get good at it, so you understand it sort of with that. And that's kind of what I mean. That's where I'm going in 2020 is maybe just only focusing on true startup founders. I mean, that is the niche. That is, okay, I've done it. And because I have the word entrepreneurs on my LinkedIn, that attracts a lot of great people. Okay. But I've even had somebody who is in a corporate setting who wants to leave and go into being an entrepreneur, but eventually he talked himself out that it wasn't for him. We looked at it all. So, I mean, I helped him, but I think that's really, what is your niche even within entrepreneurs with that? And I think and it goes back with Howard says, then once you find that out, you can begin to market or network where they may be or not be.
Thank you.
I would just add a little bit different of or maybe an added perspective, and that is that if you're starting a coaching practice, or if you are taking a step into the unknown, you have many of the same experiences that entrepreneurs do, and you probably are an entrepreneur yourself. And so as you think about that, just bear in mind that I look at entrepreneurs in two ways. One, are they creating something that didn't exist before? Number two, are they in a position of risk? And if those two elements are present, there's a lot of commonality between you and an entrepreneur as well. And so you might just think of yourself in that sense. And the divide between you and an entrepreneur, if that's not your background, may not be as big of a divide as you think.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you all. Well, I really want to thank the panel for spending an hour with us and sharing your experiences and wisdom. And you know, we want to invite everyone on the call to join the coaching community of practice. It is a free, no-cost opportunity to connect with not only Fielding alums, but other leaders in the coaching world. And all you have to do is go to our website, coach.fielding.edu, and click on Coaching Community of Practice. You can also go directly to this site at ccop.fielding.edu, and you can see all the various things that we have to offer in this coaching community of practice, most of them free of charge. We do twice a month webinars, and our next webinar will be coming up. You can see all of our webinars on our blog post. So The next one is what we call our evidence-based coaching thought leader webinar, and it will be research from Dr. Penny Potter. She's a HOD PhD graduate from Fielding and also a coach educator, and she'll be talking about her research that she did on becoming a coach. She's calling her webinar the Learning the Complex Choreography of Becoming a Coach, which itself is a transformative experience. So if you haven't been through coach training yourself, come and hear what Dr. Penny Potter has to say about that from her dissertation research. It's a really fascinating study. And of course, we record these and you can listen to them anytime on our website as well. After Penny Potter, we'll be also having another professional series webinar on coaching clients later in life for creative longevity and wisdom. We're really excited about having some EBC graduates, and then also Dr. Connie Corley is our faculty lead in the doctoral program, which studies creative longevity and wisdom. So she'll be bringing that research and practice into the world of coaching. And then Marjorie Wu, who's also an HOD graduate, and Lois Kahn-Forer, she's both an EBC graduate and a clinical psych graduate from Fielding. And they're going to be talking about how they use coaching to coach clients later in life. So we hope you could join us at one of these events. I also want to officially announce that our annual conference, which we do in May, will be May 7th through May 9th. We'll have 2 full days of exciting scholar practitioner webinars and presentations, and 2 full evenings of networking with scholar practitioners. So anyone is welcome to sign up for this. Early registration is only $500 before March 1st. So it's the greatest deal in town for 12 continuing coach education hours right on the shores of East Beach in beautiful Santa Barbara. So we hope you'll come. This last year in May, it was absolutely gorgeous weather and an incredible amount of fun. So we encourage you to also think about coming to our conference. You can also sign up to be a presenter. We are accepting applications for presenters at this time as well. So again, thank you all for coming this evening, and we hope to see you shortly on another webinar. And thanks for our esteemed panel for sharing their experiences.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Take care, everyone.
Take care.
Bye-bye. Good
Bye.
night.
Bye-bye.